Welcome everyone to the Anti-Black Racism, Racism and Discrimination Task Force. The time is officially 6:08 p.m. And I would like to start off with the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and the Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. That concludes it for the land acknowledgement. At this point, I'd like to officially welcome the newest members of the task force. We have Debbie Sipkema, we have Jay Wagstaff, and Nathan King. Welcome aboard, everyone, and I am extremely happy to have you on board. And while we're on the topic, if you could send me a headshot of yourself on a plain background, and we can have that loaded to the Town of Shelburne's committee website. So if you can do that for me in the next couple of days, that would be fantastic. Fantastic. Again, welcome aboard. And
you know, it's a long weekend, right? No.
So you don't get weekends with this committee. You don't get days off. I'm just joking.
I thought so.
Okay, so welcome everyone. At this point, I would like to do a quick roll call. So let me just pause my screen. So we have Mayor Mills, Deputy Mayor Anderson, Vice Chair Althea Casamento, Secretary Gear Harvey, Simran Bamu, Bella Carter, Cheyenne Ricci, Jay Wagstaff, Eric Prentice, a special guest, Wayne Townsend, a special guest, Ken Topping, Debbie, I think I called your name, you're here. And I think the only person is missing is probably, yes, Soha is not on board yet. Did I miss anyone?
Chief
Nope.
Moore is also absent.
Yes, Chief Moore is on vacation, so I anticipate he'll be back next week. Perfect.
Thank you.
It is Eid tonight, so that also might be a conflict.
Right, thank you. So before we go into the official agenda items, I think it's fitting that we have the three newest members do a quick introduction, and I'll start with yourself, Debbie.
Of course, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be a part of this board and to have been asked to be here. I work with, for the last 6 years, I've worked with the Dufferin County Cultural Resource Circle, bringing education through about the Indigenous community. We've held powwows, we've done all kinds of fun stuff to try and provide that education. Other than that, I'm not that busy.
You sound pretty busy to me. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you.
Nathan King.
Yep. So I'm Nathan. I go by he, him. I am a teacher at Centennial Highlands in town. I've been there for 4 years now. I'm also the equity lead rep, whatever you want to call it, for the school. So it's my responsibility to educate the staff on topics of social justice and diversity and get them to integrate these topics into their classrooms and their daily teachings, and help guide them if they ever have an issue of inclusion or bullying in their classroom, and they can come to me and I help provide them with resources. I also liaise with some of the board reps and overall staff and counselors like Kalinda Klein for the Indigenous piece, and Jessica Rowden for the overall arching equity piece. So I can help really spread these things to the next generation, right? Because we spend most of our lives as adults. They will eventually be adults with us. So they are also stakeholders in this, and will also be problem solvers with us, ending the issues of racism in the community. So that's basically where my work is.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you. And Jay.
Great. My turn?
Yes.
Hey, everybody. I am Jokes, but for those that don't, it's a pleasure to meet you. Yeah, I've lived in Shelburne for 18 years. My wife, Deb, is there. Great. Can you hear me?
I think there's a delay in her.
Oh, okay. Great. Should I keep going?
Yes, please. I can. Yeah, we can hear
Okay,
you.
great. Yeah. So yeah, I'm Jay. I lived in Shelburne for 18 years. My wife Deb is the chair of the Shelburne Food Bank. We have 2 kids. Went to school in Shelburne here. My daughter Laura just graduated from Center Dufferin. She's off to U of T in the fall, and my son Jacob is starting at Center Dufferin this year. He's a graduate of Centennial Highlands. I'm a pastor at Compass Community Church. Compass is a multi-site church. We have sites in Orangeville, Shelburne. We've been here for 6 years. That's the site I am the pastor of, and we have a site, new site in Grand Valley as well. And yeah, just super passionate about justice and issues of race and social equity, and excited to be on the team with you guys.
Perfect. Welcome aboard. The next item on the list is approval of the agenda. And the agenda was shared as yesterday with the task force. So I would like to have someone move the agenda, please.
I'll move the agenda.
And that was Ken. Do I have
Yes.
anyone?
I'll second.
Someone? Oh, Debbie second, thank you. And do I have any discussion items? Nope. All in favor? Sorry. Go ahead, Gear.
I had sent an email about having an addition to the agenda.
I did not catch that, so we can put that on the new items. What is the new addition?
There were some comments made at the last town council meeting that had me a little bit worried, given the work of the task force, and it said it had me a bit concerned that it would make the work a little bit harder.
Can everyone hear okay, or is it just my reception?
Screen. I don't know where on the agenda where the items would normally be added.
So I think for some reason it's kicked Alethea off because it now has that Wayne Townsend as the host. So I suspect
Right.
there's something happening there. So I'll go ahead. I'll just go ahead in the meantime, if that's okay. Gear, I do hear you. I'm hoping that she logs back in and we're able to look at this. I looked at her agenda. It's very jam-packed, but usually what we do is we take, after we approve the agenda, that's when we add any question or answer. If you see at 6:08, it says public questions, or maybe we can add there for questions for the group.
Okay.
If that works.
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you, Vice Chair, for stepping in. And I missed Gear's question. So what I gathered is that we'll take this up towards the end when we talk about the public questions. So I think we had, Debbie seconded the agenda, and there were no further discussions other than Gear's. And at this point, I think I just need confirmation from everyone to move forward with this, with the agenda.
Approved.
Okay.
Gear, can I just add, you add Soha, she just joined.
Sorry, I'm not understanding. Is Gear speaking about his agenda item? This is Bella.
Hi, Bella. So we'll give Gear a chance to speak about the agenda item after we get to the focus group update. Sorry, just before we get to the focus group update. So we have, next on the agenda item would be the previous meeting minutes, public participation via Q&A, those comments, if any submitted by the public. We'll give Gear a chance to discuss his agenda item. Then we'll move into the focus group, marketing updates, and then we have the presentations. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so again, all in favor of the agenda?
Aye.
Perfect. So motion carried. It's 6:18 p.m. to approve the agenda with the addition of Gear's commentary after the public Q&A section. The next item on the list is approval of previous meeting minutes. Again, the meeting minutes were shared as part of the agenda package yesterday. Can I have someone to move the agenda? Sorry, the meeting minutes.
I'll move it.
Simran, can I have someone to second the meeting minutes, please?
I'll do that.
Soha. Any discussion items on the meeting minutes?
No, thank you, Gear, for coming back.
Okay, all in favor of the meeting minutes? Perfect. Meeting minutes carried at 6:19 p.m. Okay, public participation via Q&A, and so far we have received 2 questions from the public. The 2 questions were specifically geared towards the school board, referencing the lack of diversity on task, on staff. I have directed the individuals who submitted the questions commentary to complete the survey. So I'm hoping to see more detailed response in their survey whenever it is submitted. In the meantime, I do have the commentary, and I will make sure that this is shared with the rest of the task force once we start to go through the analysis phase. Okay, there were no other questions submitted. And at this time, Gear Harvey, can I have you discuss your item, please?
I think you're on mute.
There was a motion brought before the town council.
Sorry, Gary, just before you get in there, Alicia, if you could just remove the shared screen, please.
Perfect.
Thanks. Sorry, Gary, go ahead.
Yeah. There was a motion brought before council in regards to the task force that it wasn't reflective fully of the community, and fortunately, that I suppose that concern has been addressed. There was a second part of some comments that were made at the council that really kind of worried me, and it brought to mind a comment I had made to Wade and the different counties, Mr. White, where I talked about the beast of white supremacy, and what I heard in the comment was the suggestion that council might have been moved too quickly to put the task force in place or something to the effect. It's on there on YouTube for us to understand, or for us to listen to on our own. And it just disheartened me, because it felt like even before we got started that folks were being swayed or losing heart, right? Or kind of wanting us to go back to complacency as it relates to issues around race and discrimination. And so I was just a little bit concerned about that, and I wanted to bring that to the task force's attention. I also wanted the task force to be very aware of of what white supremacy looks like and how it plays itself out in these things. I described it as a beast in the previous conversations. Nathan, you wouldn't understand it as well, in terms of patriarchy and heterosexism. But I just want for us as a committee to continue to educate ourselves to understand how white supremacy plays itself out, and how it does not want to create progress or wants to put up roadblocks. So that's just my comment. Maybe people will understand the comments from the gentleman on the council meeting differently, but that's what I kind of felt in the moment.
Okay, thank you, Gare. Mayor Mills, did you want to address that, or Deputy Mayor Anderson?
I mean, if Deputy Mayor Anderson wants to speak to it, I think he spoke, rather passionately last Monday night. I mean, the comments are what they are. I'm not going to try to distill them any further on behalf of that particular council member. That they are available for anybody to watch. If anybody has any concerns or wants any clarification, then I would suggest that you reach out and speak to that particular council member or members individually to see what what their thoughts or feelings were with respect to those comments. But I don't want to put words in that person's mouth. So the video is there. It's available for anybody to see, and would suggest everybody do that.
It's at the 2:10 mark or so of the video.
Okay, thank you. The one thing that I do have to, I appreciate your comment, Gare, and the one thing that I want to make sure that we all keep in mind is that we all have a voice on this task force. And even with the new members, I don't think this will take away from the work. It is even more reason for us to make sure that each of our voices are heard and that we're working collectively for the greater good of the Shelburne community. So I think collectively we can accomplish great things. And if we keep the original mandate in mind, I think we will definitely reach our end goal. So thank you for raising that. And I think even with the new members, I think we're even stronger.
Can I just ask a question to Greer? I didn't read that stuff, so you just fill us in a bit here, fill me in a bit. Were you referring to a motion or something that was made by council, or just comments made during a discussion?
Comments made. It wasn't, the motion was an issue. The motion made it stronger. I realized it was the comments more so.
So okay, thank you. I understand.
So, I don't think the role of the task force is to, to understand and analyze those discussions. Mayor Mills have, clearly stated that, if we want to reach out to the individual or individuals who had those comments, we can. I don't want to lose focus on the work that we have to do. So thank you for raising your concern, Gare. And I think we should move full steam ahead and make sure that we achieve the objective that as a task force we set out to accomplish. There will always be challenges, and I don't think we should get sidetracked looking at things as they come up. There will always be challenges. It's up to us to overcome those challenges and obstacles and move forward towards our end goal.
I completely agree. I feel our mandate has been given to us. Our job has been given to us. We need to focus on our job. Everyone will have something to say. It's just our job to do our job.
Okay. The next item on the agenda.
Alethea, I don't know if I was trying to say something. This is Bella.
Hi, Bella. Go ahead.
I'm just concerned. I want to make sure what was said. I want to hear it first because I couldn't watch the town council meeting like I usually do this last Monday. So I am concerned if someone from this task force brings something up that happened or was said at our town council meeting, I do want to hear it first before we move forward. I do want to know what was said.
Okay, so then I would encourage everyone, if you haven't already watched the council meetings, to do so, and I will put a full agenda, an item on the agenda for next task force meeting where we can have a fulsome discussion. Okay, I don't think at this point it makes sense for us to continue having a conversation on this when not everyone is, privy to the information or have seen the information that Gary is referencing. And again, I want to remind everyone that we do have an objective. We do have a clear mandate that has been outlined for us. Again, there will always be obstacles. There will always be setbacks. It is up to us collectively to work together to make sure that we're achieving our goal. And if it means that there are questions that we need to raise as challenges, let's do that. But at the same time, let's not lose sight of what we have to accomplish.
Agreed.
If I may just briefly add to that, and I think Gear's approach and your approach in the sense of allowing people to go take a look at the video and to decipher as they wish. I think the mayor's comments are spot on in the sense that we're not really here to examine intentions of anybody in the statements that they've made. And I think if anybody does have questions with respect to anybody that has made comments from council, whether it's myself, the mayor, or anybody else, they certainly have the ability and the right to reach out to that individual or individuals and seek clarification. And I think, as we've already heard, it's not really the mandate of the task force, even though comments in the public sphere could appear to make the work difficult. But as Alethea said and Althea said, that our job is really to focus on the task at hand. So whether people want to pat us on the shoulder with respect to what we're doing or have opinions otherwise, the mandate is the mandate. So personally, I really don't see the need to have it as a full item discussion, or discussion item rather, on the next agenda, because that's not the mandate of the task force to examine what may have been the intentions of anybody who's made comments at the council table. And I would encourage folks to, if they do have concerns, to maybe reach out to again, whether it's an individual or individuals directly, as we all have emails. And so certainly if there are questions, you can certainly put it to those individuals. So those are my comments on that. And I guess maybe we could just continue to move forward on what we have for today.
I just want to interject here, please. Really quick comments on this. I agree with what everybody has said so far on this topic, but I think what our mandate is to make recommendations. And if the comments that were made that were contrary to promoting inclusion and diversity, or sort of creating hassles from a council perspective, then we might learn what those comments were and maybe include our suggestions as a task force based on what we understand and what we take away from those comments.
That's a fair statement, Simran. Thank you. Are there any other comments on this point before we move forward?
I just want to thank Gear for pointing it out, because I mean, we're all busy and we can't all watch town council meetings all the time as much as I want to. So I'm really glad that he brought it up so I could go back and look at the YouTube video.
Okay, perfect. The next item on the list is just an update from Simran on the focus group.
So update so far. Also, I want to update the new members that we have on the task force. On the focus group, we have decided that we would have 20 participants for whom the primary criteria is, eligibility criteria is them being living or working in Shelburne, and their age should be 18 plus. We need 20 participants. Does not mean that we limit our invitations to only 20 people, but we also don't want to make it a public thing that where we are inviting applications from everyone from the public. Then it becomes very difficult to reject certain applications, and then, you know, spending time going back and forth describing why they were not eligible or why somebody else was chosen over them, or, you know, things like that. So that's why we wanted to keep it very intimate, and we wanted to keep it amongst ourselves. We had discussed the secondary criteria as well. So what I did was, after taking into consideration feedbacks from all the members of the task force, I created a participant information sheet that makes all the details very clear to them as well as to all of us. What that sheet includes is information on what is the purpose of this study, who is conducting the study, and if it is a voluntary participation from the participants or if it is a mandatory one. And what does it involve if they agree to take part in this? What about the confidentiality and the data protection? It also includes what could be the potential risks of participating in this study, how it is going to benefit them and the entire town, and what will happen as the result of the study, as well as who has reviewed the study, who has approved the study. So people do not just, you know, be suspicious of how this information could be used. And then their next steps on what they should be doing once they agree to participate in this. So far, thank you, Alethea, we have 6 participants whose information I have updated in an Excel sheet, and I'm hoping that it will be okay with everyone. I'm not too sure how you guys want to go about it. I was hoping that I can share it on a Google Drive with everyone. So in case they have somebody who's interested in it, they can update their information there and send out a consent form. And as soon as I receive the consent form, all I have to do is in one tab, I have to just check it off that I have received a consent form. And I would really appreciate if all of you can reach out to your personal connections and find out people who we think should be participating in this, who would be able to give us unbiased responses to our questions, the same questions that are on the survey, and it will be a discussion style. So we would definitely want more exposure from people.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your update.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next.
I'm sorry, I had something else as well. So something came up yesterday through GEAR. We were going back and forth, I remember a few meetings ago, about the mandate, where we wanted to include, as part of our mandate, instead of racialized individuals, we wanted to mention marginalized individuals. And when a part of this information sheet included the purpose of the study. So I had taken off exactly what was mentioned on the survey, on top of the survey that talks about highlighting. Let me just read it word to word. So it did not include anything about discrimination alone. It spoke about institutionalized racism and I think racism overall. It didn't talk about discrimination. So did you guys want me to make a change to that and include discrimination?
Sorry, just a question. So far we have, so the words are racialized and marginalized?
Yes.
Okay, and then you're asking if we should put discrimination on there as
No,
well?
not in the mandate, but if you open up the link that I had shared, the page that I had shared with the information for participants,
Mm-hmm.
in that page under the purpose of the study,
Mm-hmm.
there it talks about, let me just pull it up and I can read word by word.
I'll try to find it in the email too.
So the only thing I would caution against using words that we haven't approved as part of the mandate.
No, it was under the mandate because we did use marginalized.
So,
So it said,
we used marginalized and or racialized. That was the compromise.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And what we, I have the screenshot in front of me. So what that section of the survey, as well as the focus group information, suggests is, as part of a process of identifying critical issues related to racial discrimination and institutional racism in our community, we are asking you to complete this survey. So instead, is there a way, or if you guys want, should I include racial discrimination and institutional racism as well as discrimination in our community? Just insert discrimination in there.
I think I'm okay with that. Task force, does anyone have any objections to?
I think that's good because even as a part of our name, we do have discrimination task force. And there are other things people can be discriminated for other than race.
Absolutely.
Yes. So is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
I'm seeing yes from everyone. Bella? Perfect.
On my phone, actually, because but she did send it out and looked fine.
Okay.
Same one, right?
So I believe it's the same copy that Simran had shared by email. So I think we can move forward with that, Simran. Thank you.
Anybody else has any specific questions? I will be sending out a copy of this participation information and consent form with the new members as well.
Perfect, thank you. Just to keep the agenda going, the next item on the list is an update on marketing. So today, a number of things happened. So we had the bulk mail is starting today, as well as the survey link has been posted, and it is officially on Instagram, Facebook. I haven't checked Twitter yet, but the schedule was for it to be on Twitter as well as the LCD screens. The newspaper ad is to go out today as well. And the radio ad started this morning as well. So from a marketing perspective, we are on track, which is very exciting news. I did share the link with everyone for the survey on the town website. So please, if you haven't already had a chance to complete the survey and share it with your network. At this point, I think I would like to share, hopefully this works, share with you the content of the approved radio ad. And I'm not sure if you can hear it. This is something new I'm trying for the first time. So let me know if you can hear the actual volume.
Is it as good as Wade's appearance in that Shelburne YouTube video? Alethea?
Sorry?
Is it as good as Wade's appearance in that Shelburne video? That was a pretty good video.
I didn't see the video.
I did not see it.
Whoa, it's a good video. You guys got. I got so many likes for posting it in the Shelburne Resource Group. I felt so popular.
Okay, we'll definitely have to check. Okay, just give me 30 seconds. I'm gonna hit play. Let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it, someone.
I saw that video. That's phenomenal. It's so good. I loved it.
Now I have to go take a look.
Okay,
Yeah,
for some
I'm
reason,
very
I'm not hearing the
lost.
video. Okay, so the video, the audio does not want to work for me. So instead, I will share with you the text version. Okay, so the text version that has been approved, and you will be able to hear it on our local radio station, simply says, June 14th, 2020 was a historic day in the town of Shelburne, where many marched in support of ending racism and discrimination in our community. Now, the town's anti-racism and discrimination task force is conducting a survey to get a better understanding of issues related to racial discrimination and institutional racism in our community. This 20-minute survey is voluntary, confidential, and will not be used to identify individuals. All responses will be compiled, analyzed as a group, and included in a future report along with recommendations to council. To take the survey, please visit haveyoursay.shelburne.ca. That's haveyoursay.shelburne.ca. So that is the marketing update. And sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say something. I know we're like super behind, but at the end, like maybe like when everything is done, I just wanted to talk about, I met with one of my school board trustees today, Lynn. It was Mr. Ken Topping's wife, and there was some things that she said that I want to share with you guys. So whenever we have a chance, I want to say something.
Okay.
I got the audio if you want me to play it.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, hold on.
June 14, 2020 was an historic day in the town of Shelburne where many marched in support of ending racism and discrimination in our community. Now, the town's Anti-Racism and Discrimination Task Force is conducting a survey to get a better understanding of issues related to racial discrimination and institutional racism in our community. This 20-minute survey is voluntary, confidential, and will not be used to identify individuals. All responses will be compiled, analyzed as a group, and included in a future report along with recommendations to council. To take the survey, please visit haveyoursay.shelburne.ca.
Perfect. Thank you, Althea.
Okay, good. You all heard.
Yes. Okay, the final item that we need approval for, we would like to have Inclusify come back in, or at least Inclusify has agreed to come back in to help us with the analysis of the data. So at this point, she or they, we're looking at a budget of up to $1,000, and we do have funds remaining from all of our marketing budgets. So at this point, I would like someone to approve the motion to have Inclusify come back in and help us with the analysis and preparation of the data for Shelburne Town Council. And keeping in mind that this was a heavily discussed item at the beginning of our task force. You know, we were looking for, or Ken had highlighted the fact that, you know, it would be great to have someone on board to help facilitate some of these activities. So at this point, I'm looking for someone to approve.
I can approve that.
Approve it.
Okay, so I'll put Gare down as approvers and Althea second.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone have any discussion points on this item? Okay, hearing no, all approved?
Approved.
Okay, so it is 6:42 p.m. and the motion has been approved to have Inclusify come back in and help us with the analysis and preparation of the recommendations to Shelburne Town Council. So I will update the project plan and include that information for all of us and recirculate it. So that concludes the official task force housekeeping items. We can now officially move into stakeholder presentations. So first on our list is Wayne Townsend. Wayne, can you just give us a brief introduction and jump right into your presentation, please?
I'd be more comfortable if I could see your faces.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Let me stop sharing my screen. And Gear, the time was 6:42 for that motion. Sorry.
Thank you very
There
much.
you go. Perfect.
Chair Stevenson, members of the task force, it's an honor to do a presentation with you this evening. I have never lived in Shelburne, although my parents did for 30 years, and I never lived there because they never invited me. I was raised in Dufferin County, and as I told your chair when she asked me to present, my experience in this county may be a little bit different than others' experiences. I was raised in a place called Monticello, where we had a one-room schoolhouse. In that one-room schoolhouse, within 20 kids, we had Polish, Dutch, German, kids from England, Switzerland, 2 young girls from Haiti who spoke only French when they arrived at our little school. In my family, my dad's uncle brought home from France from World War II, he brought home a French girl. And my aunt, who was a nurse in World War II, brought home a Turkish Muslim who didn't speak English as well. So my cousin is native. She was adopted into our family when she was 2 years old. So I feel that we had a pretty diverse background. The Frank Saluki, who lived in our community, had been a prisoner of war and lived in a concentration camp. Mrs. Lipsy, who lived in town, I don't remember noting that what the numbers on her wrists meant. All I remember was that she was very daring and she wore red lipstick, which was very unusual in this community in the 1950s. In our church, we had a small church, so everybody mixed together, Lutherans, Catholics, Protestants, Baptists, because it was only one church. The one memory I have of that church, and I'm certainly not a member of a church anymore, but I remember something that carried with me my whole life. And we would sit around and we would sing a song and it said, Jesus loved the little children, all the children of the world, whether they were yellow, black, or white, they were precious in his sight. Jesus loved the little children of the world. And although I don't continue to be a church member, that thing that I learned as a very small child is something I believe to this very day. And that was sort of the basis for my life. In a small community, we had common goals, and that's what your challenge will be as a task force, to identify what the common goals of your community are now. Certainly when I was growing up was to get the kids educated, because everyone knew that would be a way to get free, and how to improve our land, how to make more food for the people in our community to eat. One thing that we all knew in a rural community, that no matter what the background, no matter what the color, no matter what the financial situation, you helped each other unconditionally. No matter what the tragedy was, if your barn burned down or your crop failed or your wife went away, it didn't really matter, someone died, everyone in the community got behind you. It was really, really important. As a historian, I want you to be aware that I was always very aware that discrimination has always been part of our history here. Certainly, I know that I was part of a group called the Dirty Irish. We were considered a rather despicable group of people from the Isles because we drank and sang and played the fiddle and lived a great life. So I remember as a child as well also hearing the word DP, which is meant displaced person after the Second World War. And I realize now that I'm very happy that that terminology does not exist anymore. When we meet someone new, when we meet someone different, we're suspicious at first. We're animals. We learn by experience. We're like chipmunks. You come very, very close and sort of check it out. And then as you have shared experiences and share things, you realize that there is no difference. The common goals of your community will be more difficult than my background with discrimination, because simply back then we were all poor. There wasn't any social discrimination in my community. Everybody, I guess when your goal is greed, I guess then someone becomes disadvantaged almost immediately. As a gay person growing up in this community, did I get a bit of bullying and did I get a teasing? But it never really bothered me, I have to admit, because I always knew that I had the support of my friends and my family and my community. It was very, very important to me. I never felt at risk because I was known, I knew who the people were, and I always felt safe, because when a community is really small, you know everybody. And it's more difficult for your task force because the community is much broader and much bigger. You can't know everybody in the high school anymore. Did I ever feel excluded and discriminated against? Probably a little bit. Probably most often as I worked for government, where I probably should have been protected the most. Personally, I believe in inclusion, not in exclusion. I believe that everybody has to work together, whether you're straight, black, yellow, whatever your religious beliefs is. It's only if you work together as a group that you get it to work. As a gay person, yes, I have great gay friends, and we have a great gay community here, but certainly I'm part of a much broader community, which includes a lot of different people, and I see some of your faces on this screen tonight. Work together, find the common goals, whatever they are, and that will blend you together. Back then, the common goal was just beating the weather because we all had to grow crops and eat a little bit. And when you find differences, don't look down at a person because they're different. Celebrate the differences. And that's sort of what we're doing in Orangeville, our Celebrate You're Awesome. That yeah, we're all different, we're all this and that and the other thing, but celebrate the differences instead of trying to make everybody different and feel excluded. So that's my presentation. My husband and I are very, very happy here in Dufferin County. We feel very supported. I like that it's a very inclusive community. But as I said, you know, I grew up with all sorts of colors and races and religions around me, and I thought that that's how everybody lived. I guess that's not true anymore, and that disappoints me a little bit. So I congratulate you on trying to correct the changes in the community that I've seen. It doesn't work together like it used to, but I know people like yourselves will make it work. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Very insightful. Do you know of any specific issues that have occurred in Shelburne? I know you've had, you know, a lot of experience, you know, in Dufferin County and have lots of friends right across. So
I think yes. Shelburne's pretty tough. Always has been. Eric will probably address that a little bit better than I can. But I think that as the community changed racially, I definitely felt there was a suspicion at first because people were so different. But that certainly hasn't been my experience as far as the Indian community, certainly because Alice Porter has been a great part of my life, and she was a missionary in India. To see Indian people was a welcome thing because she talked about them, and we saw films from Alice and pictures my whole life. So it was wonderful to welcome them into my community. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any comments questions from the task force?
Thank you, Wayne, for your presentation. That was amazing that you took the time to share that with us and your experiences. It was great to hear all your experiences and what you've shared of what you have had throughout your life and your amazing connections.
Yeah. Thank you, and good luck, everybody.
Wayne, can I ask one question?
Sure can.
Although you're just a youngster yourself, you're quite acquainted with the senior community. Do you see how the senior community in Dufferin and Shelburne are taking? How are they feeling about the changes that are taking place in our community?
Well, the community that I know, except for a couple of people over in Amaranth, I think that there has definitely. People of that age group are much more accepting than I would have expected. It's, you know, when you get old, you sort of realize that, you know, the need for discrimination is really not an important issue. When you're looking at death in a few years, stuff like that really doesn't have a huge amount of importance.
Great
you said
insights.
you're a historian. Can you say a little bit, would you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
I was employed at the Dufferin County Museum for 28 years, I guess. I've written several books on the area. When people have a question, they just ask me. I don't know. I don't know. I guess I'm just recognized perhaps as a community historian. I'm not sure why, but I can tell a good story anyway, Gear.
Good to know. Someone was telling me that Shelburne has some roots in Black history. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, sir. North of Shelburne, certainly there was a Black community. The gravestones are gone pretty well now. It's a little church sort of between Shelburne and Dundalk, near where the Gants all lived. So yeah, there was quite a larger community in East Garifraxa as well. A lot of them came up very, very early with Richard Pierpoint, who is one of my heroes. If look him up, he's absolutely an amazing man, and he fought with Butler's Rangers. And it wasn't until I was working at the museum that people had discovered that he was actually Black.
Yeah, that's important to have this information about history. Not many people in Shelburne are aware of, you know, the Gant family and Pierpoint and the role that they played in developing Dufferin County. So that is great, great information for us. Thank you.
Just one quick question for you, Wayne. And again, I thank you for your presentation. I think as Ken alluded to, with age comes wisdom. And so I'm going to draw upon that right now, if I can. What would be, if you have any, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what recommendations, you know, as we talk about making the community more inclusive, accepting for all peoples, is there any specific recommendations or any thoughts that you have as to how we could go about doing that? So whether, for example, it's educational awareness is one example. Is there anything that sort of comes off the top of your head?
It's about kids. I took the things I learned as a child throughout my entire life, and I think that it's with age comes wisdom, but it also becomes harder to change. But if young children sort of get it, then they carry it through their entire life. But we don't have like the church foundation and the community foundations we used to have to teach us these things. So it's up to the parents, and I'm not sure that the parents are doing that, and the schools are sometimes afraid to.
I also made note here, Wayne, that you spoke about common goals, the importance of common goals.
Just touching on the fear, and I think this is a generic question, is the fear more around the lack of education or the uncertainty, or what could be attributed to the fear so that we can address that? And again, I'm putting you on the spot.
I think it's just familiarity. Certainly, once as a gay person, you know, once someone learned to like me, the fact that I was gay probably became very insignificant. So I think it's the same with any sort of discrimination. Once you love somebody, it doesn't really matter what they're wrapped in, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about loving somebody and caring about them and caring that they're happy.
Thank you. And I think one of the common themes that, you know, have been connecting with me is, you know, the idea of sharing stories. And, you know, through these presentations, we're learning more about individuals and their circumstances and the world that has shaped them into who they are today. So I think one of the great ways that we can, you know, continue on this journey is to continue these conversations and making sure that we get to understand individuals and how they operate in the world around them.
While I have your attention, Thea, please give me an email, because there's a person from the 1920s in Orangeville who's opened up our first nursing home, who's from Barbados. So I don't think any of that history has ever come out. So remind me and I'll send that information to you.
Perfect, I will do that. In the essence of time, I'd like to move on. If we do have additional questions at the end, we can definitely circle back, but I want to make sure that all of our presenters have a chance to share the work that they've prepared for us tonight. So next is Eric Prentice, welcome.
Hi there. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Althea, for bringing me on. Althea was my boss for the last year, and it was a pleasure. No longer, though. I'm off with another agency, so I'm with SHIP now as a community mental health counselor and housing stability. Wayne, you're a bit of a legend in this town. So it's hard to follow you up, so I don't even know if I'm going to really try, but
you're apprentice.
Yeah, so I'm apprentice. I grew up in Shelburne, or just north of it. Honeywood actually is where I spent most of my life, and grew up on a potato farm, so all sorts of white bread there. And it wasn't really until I finished high school, I graduated high school, and we had about 5 individuals of color who graduated alongside of me, and I was happy to be befriended more than half of those. So I was really grateful for them and being open to learn from them and be non-judgmental and just very different from what I was used to growing up. But it wasn't until I was finished high school that I came out as gay. And when I was entering college, and I went to school at Seneca College for social service work. And I remember it stating right in the tagline, be open to, learning new things and having your thoughts challenged. Because I feel like a lot of people come in with very closed-minded ideas and just not exploring the world a little bit. And I was happy that I did so. And I was so open, and it wasn't till actually this past year that I came back and circled back and ended up teaching there for a little bit. And when I went to university at York University, my first friend was Muslim, and I was very excited to learn a lot about that culture from them, who was so open and gracious to teach me, and I was excited too. So that's pretty much my story so far. But I want to actually just kind of jump into some of the questions that was presented in the email. I think that might give me a better idea of what to talk about. So I don't know if anybody else has the questions in front of them, but I know the first question was in regards to, as a stakeholder, am I aware of any barriers or access to or discrimination for individuals in our community? So I would say a big one right now is that we're experiencing is barriers include funding and lack of space to gather for any group or diverse individuals. And cost for that. So I think unless it kind of comes free, it's kind of hard to gather in those spaces. And I feel it's so important for different communities to be able to have safe spaces to discuss what they're experiencing, the challenges that we face in Shelburne, or even some of the amazing initiatives that are coming up. So this task force being, I think, most newest exciting thing that we're coming across. Having the Black Lives Matter March in Orangeville was such an amazing, huge moment, historical moment. And then of course having Celebrate Your Awesome for the last few years has been incredible too. And then so much more. So those are one, quick little events, but I think we need more ongoing spaces for these such groups to get together and talk. I feel like we're growing as a community, but is our culture within the community growing with us? Is the question that I pose. The second question that was on that list was, what anti-Black racism, racism and discrimination have you faced, seen, or heard? So of course, like Wayne, I've had my share of discrimination in terms of gay and bullied. But from what I've seen in the community, I think we get a lot of micro and macro statements too, such as, throwing slang around, ghetto, comments about people from, Peel coming to Dufferin who are, people of color who are considered, problematic. And that's, really unfair. That all of a sudden we see this spike of crime, but we really don't have statistics to show that. And if there is, it's just because our population is growing, and that just happens. I think we see, I've seen lesbian couples be denied housing because of their relationship. We hear stories of people not being employed. I know there's a lot of statements back to that saying you can't, refuse people employment or housing because it's, for being of color or being part of the LGBT community, that's illegal, except that there's nothing stopping employers or landlords from just simply not choosing that person. You don't have to be so direct about it. And that's a problem too. We have to get around those little barriers. We've seen pushback against the LGBT support. So recently, Bob Curry's statements, that's a problem. How impactful that is to especially youth growing up in this community who want our leaders to show some sort of respect for them so they feel safe. And of course, people not being supportive of Celebrate Your Awesome at the beginning there. And of course, I've had some youth say to me that they've heard really discriminative comments being yelled at them from moving vehicles, which seems to be an ongoing concern, which is really sad. The third question is, what have you done to improve or address this situation? So I was featured in the Orangeville Banner, just like Wayne was recently, in regards to a story coming up. Thanks, Sophia. And I talked about going, not just creating a safe space or making sure it's safe, but we have to go beyond, I think, the symbols, the safe space symbols, beyond the flag, beyond those colors. You have to actually put in the work. You have to create a culture. So, you know, if I can share the choices, when we have intakes, we ask, what is your gender identity? I think it's normalizing across the board. You're making sure we're shutting down inappropriate comments, any racist comments, any bullying, discrimination. You have to create this culture of support, and making sure staff are also educated so they can identify even the little things. Sorry, I'm just losing my spot here. I try to actively work as an ally to all diverse groups, share information that I'm learning through school, try to correct maybe inappropriate comments, donating to anti-racism causes, making sure it's nice, loud, and proud, so that people in the community can access it and they can help educate that way. And of course, supporting businesses owned by LGBT individuals or Black individuals, so on. I know we're pressed for time, so I want to just kind of jump to the end. I was speaking to a therapist named Melissa Galbraith, who's also fairly local. I do believe she's kind of teeters on it. She grew up in Grey County, but works out of Shelburne now. And she's also part of the LGBT community, and we discussed kind of things that we need to see. I think our community is doing a really good job of trying to support youth. I think that the initiatives could be bigger and there could be more of them and in more spaces. I would like to see it out of Grand Valley and of course more in Shelburne. I know it's fairly new in Shelburne. There's youth groups forming, and then COVID of course kind of messed that up a little bit. But we'd like to see more grandiose. And we'd also like to see popular media choices, maybe even in schools, that don't just reflect cisgendered, heterosexual, white individuals. We need to see more representation and make that normative. And then the last big one is, I have absolutely nowhere to refer adults who are experiencing discrimination and racism and maybe need counseling and support, or even just their general community. So it doesn't have to be professional support. We don't always need that. We need just inner supports and spaces to go, which ties me back to the beginning of my comments of having spaces to go. So I think we have adults who are going through these, who are discovering themselves, or who are maybe going through rough times and have nowhere really to go or feel they don't. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on a social media platform. I don't think that's always appropriate or good. I would like to see, once COVID is maybe settling a little bit, more spaces, physical spaces for people to go and hang out and discuss. I think that's really needed, because I know there's some individuals in the community who are desperate for that, and I just don't have anywhere to send them other than a therapist, and I don't know if that's necessarily appropriate all the time. So that's pretty much my spiel. I apologize if that took a little longer than I hoped, but
No worries.
thank you for your time, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. You shared quite a bit of information, and one of the things that jumped out at me, you talked about therapists. I wonder if you have any stats through your work on the impacts of discrimination. I'm going to call it trauma, you know, on mental health in marginalized communities. Do you have any stats or any commentary around the impacts?
I don't have stats specifically on that, but I know that when we talk about mental health, it's 90% of even from youth until middle age, 90% of people that go in needing therapy, trauma is the most impacted thing. So you could touch that to anything. And I'm sure that racialized individuals, that is a huge component of it.
Perfect, thank you.
And of course, you know, feeling safe in their communities is a huge part of that. So if you have people not feeling safe, that would, of course, would create trauma.
Are you familiar with, sorry. Are you familiar with Trinity Church? I think they're doing some work around the LGBT community in terms of a space to gather. Are you familiar with them?
Yes, that Melissa was just informing of that. So that's the initiatives I'm really excited to see, and I'm really happy to hear that that is happening. The other component to that, and unfortunately I have to be really transparent, is that when LGBTQ individuals hear church, there's a knee-jerk reaction to pull away. It's just how it's always been, but there's a lot of talk around how pastors have really pushed and are really supportive of that, making it really safe. You know, it is a space, it is a physical space, and I think it's nice to see leaders in this community trying their best to support all individuals. And so yes, I am aware, and thank you. I will continue to advocate for that.
Perfect, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions for Eric?
Yes.
I'd just like to say, Eric, your grandparents would be very proud of you. You've grown up to be a very fine young man.
Thank you. Thank you.
To talk, or even just places where people can go, even if they don't want to share anything, where they can just go and just automatically feel like a comforting vibe, or just to go there and get away from everything. I feel like that's something I've always like had at the back of my mind. I know it sounds weird, but I never knew how to say it, and I'm glad that you did, because I just feel like, oh, there are people, you know, who think the same, or who recognize that we need spaces to just feel like we can be really safe.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I think you did well. You held your own, even following Wayne. And thank you so much for all your hard work and the things that you have done in this community to make it easier for anyone facing discrimination. You are definitely a leader. So thank you for having your say and your input in this presentation. It's very much valued.
Thank you. I'm excited to see what the task force will do. I'm excited to see my blind spots lifted a little bit. I feel like that's important. I understand where I stand from a social standpoint, and that I still have to continue learning, and by all means reach out and discuss what I need to do if it helps.
Perfect. I appreciate that, Eric. And I will definitely keep in touch with you, because I think you have a lot of knowledge and valuable advice to share.
Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation.
Eric, I actually appreciate Eric saying that that there are blind spots, because a lot of people don't say, they go, I'm not a racist, or, you know, whatever it is, but they don't realize that they were actually, just by the fact of being born white, have been brought up in privilege without even knowing it. It's subconscious. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, I'm glad you brought up the issue of the new kids coming from like the Peel area. Because I know people have said to me before, like, it's the new kids causing trouble, like they're problematic, so on and so on. And then it's now those kids feel like they're not welcome in Shelburne. So why would they feel comfortable talking to anybody about anything? Like, I'm glad that you brought light to that situation.
Yeah, thank you. It's always the farm boys with the problems. No, I think it's important. Yes, I agree.
Thanks for bringing it up, Cheyenne, because it actually cued me to remember something. You mentioned spike in crime, and reading the papers, I see the same stuff: tickets and speeding tickets. Is there something else I don't know about? Or
my
to that point, actually,
you know what?
It's
yeah.
Alice. No, it's sorry. Go ahead,
my
Eric.
neighbor's house exploding in a couple of years.
Speeding tickets, I have a theory. I think it's the Honda Allison plant. Just because my partner works there and he's got to use a few of those tickets. So, but yes, it's not fair to blame it on individuals coming up. I think it's, you know, we have our share of people here. So
the reality is too, and the deputy mayor and Althea and I all sit on the local police services board, and this year, even prior to COVID-19, our crime numbers, both in terms of occurrences and crime severity, were down dramatically over previous years. So, you know, there absolutely is no truth to that.
Right.
So, but that is part of the narrative that some will try to spin.
Yeah, well, we know that just higher numbers of populations will generally show crime, but if not, it's generally poverty and crime are co-linked. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of individuals, people of color, who do live in poverty, and that's certainly not by choice. I think the system keeps them at like that way, and so it's not because of color; it's because the system has done that.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that perspective, Eric. Thank you. If we have no further questions or comments, I would like to now introduce Jay to, have him introduce himself and go ahead with his presentation.
Sure. I'm just going to start by quickly echoing Eric's comments about Wayne. Wayne, you are truly a legend. I remember growing up in the 80s in Orangeville. Wayne owned a business that was a safe place for everyone to go to in high school, whether you were straight or gay or black or white or popular or not popular. You could go to Wayne's restaurant and feel welcome. So it's an honor and so great to hear from you tonight, Wayne. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, my name is Jay, and as I said when I introduced myself at the beginning, I'm a local pastor here in town at Compass Community Church, and as a Christian and a pastor, my faith is obviously the filter for my life. I mean, Jesus continually dignified and provided equity for the marginalized of his culture. The church historically, when working as it ought, has always been on the forefront of social reform, be it establishing education or healthcare or orphanages or the abolition of slavery. When the church has worked right, it's been involved in social justice and social issues. So that's kind of the context of where I would come from a faith perspective. For our time tonight, I'm going to also, as Eric did, lean on some of the questions because I thought they're really great that Alethea had provided. As a key stakeholder in the community, are you aware of any barriers to access or discrimination for individuals in our community? I am not personally, but I would say that I believe the same barriers that exist culturally in our country are most likely evident in Shelburne. I'm sure they are there, socially, politically, in the workplace. I imagine they are there, and I'm sure that they are. The second question was, what anti-Black racism and discrimination have you faced, seen, or heard? A couple of examples that I put in were two. One was overt, and one was more subtle. The overt one was, I went to my son's volleyball game last year, two competing local schools. And some of the kids on one of the competing teams made some racist remarks were uttered. And it was quickly dealt with by the coach and the team. And I didn't know what was going on at the time. There was obviously some kind of issue on the bench. And only afterwards, when I asked my son, did he inform me kind of what the kids had said. So that was an overt example of racism recently. The other one was a few years back. We were invited to a friend of ours for a barbecue, a neighbor from the Black community, friends of ours, largely made up of people from the Black community here in town. And we were having a great time. And there was a noise complaint from a neighboring house just down the road. So somebody had called the police about excessive noise. And the police came and stopped at our gathering first, which was interesting and disappointing, I think, for the other guests at the event. Not knowing the motivation of what happened, but just kind of the way it happened was, a real eye-opener for me. And I'm on this task force as much taking a posture of learning as instructing. And that was a learning moment for me, and be able to talk to our hosts and say, like, how often do things like that happen? So it was a great open door of conversation and understanding for me personally. And the volleyball kind of example was a great teachable moment with my kid, right? About why that's not cool and you know, how harmful that is and can be. What have I done to improve or address situations like that when confronted with them? Yeah, dialogue and discourse and education, talking to my friends in the Black community, using them as teachable moments. I've been involved in One Voice, One Team at the high school. Had the privilege of speaking at the Black Lives Matter March here in Shelburne, which was such an honor. And yeah, just being involved with this task force is another important step in that, I believe, as well. Has your organization found it necessary to provide a safe space for individuals? When we launched our site here in Shelburne just over 5 years ago, our church site, we began as exclusively a white congregation, about 40 people, planning a church, starting. We quickly grew and became almost overnight quite diverse. So we are represented by a rich ethnic diversity at the church, which was awesome. And we quickly said, okay, how do we live as a family together in such a diverse community? So some of the best practices that we have kind of instituted into our organization have been inviting and encouraging those from the Black community and other communities to get involved in areas of leadership and volunteerism at our church. Like, get involved, get plugged in, lead somewhere. Having representation of diversity on stage during all our in-person gatherings has been important as well. Currently, we're doing that online. All our services are online. So if we have hosts or we have readers or music, we try to express the diversity that's represented in our congregation. When we choose media, videos that we show, pre and post music, service music, we try and choose intentionally and be really intentional about the music that we choose and the faces on the screen, that they represent our entire community. We run a great summer camp for kids in the summer here in Shelburne for community kids. And at the end of the week, we offer little illustrated children's Bibles for the kids if they would like one. And we make sure that we have an accurate portrayal of Jesus, not as white, but as brown. So little things like that are actually big things as we pass out those Bibles to kids as well. We advertise and we encourage our congregation to get involved in community events like Black Lives Matter and Multicultural Day and other events that are happening in town. And our elders board, we have become much more intentional about engaging in discussion around issues of race. So those are some of the things that we've done as a church recently and been intentional about as we've recognized and embraced kind of the diversity that's there, which is so exciting and we're so pleased about. In regard to the question about safe spaces, I almost didn't feel that was a question I could answer. So I went to some friends from our church, from the Black community, and asked them, does this feel like a safe space? Does our church feel like a safe space? If there were issues of race, if there were issues that needed to be addressed, do you feel that like you could come and talk to the leadership of our church? And unequivocally, the answer was yes, they felt it was, which was super encouraging for me. And I was so glad that that was the answer. While that's a positive response, obviously we know there's still so much we can do in terms of equality and race to best represent the convictions that we do have and that we're passionate about. What would you recommend the town implement? I just listed some things to combat racism and discrimination in our community. I put things like maybe establishing inclusion guidelines for community committees and events. I'm not sure if those things exist already. That was just an idea that came to my mind. Lobbying for equitable representation of race in our schools, our police force, our government positions. Lobbying our school board to include teaching on Black history curriculum at all of our schools, not just some of our schools. Hosting organizations that have a proven track record in racism education and offering those services in our community. Ensuring that community events and festivals are representative of all of our citizens in terms of content. Being intentional in recruiting local businesses that reflect Shelburne's diversity was another one I had down. And when racism does prevent itself, allowing a safe forum to discuss and confront and heal and grow in those areas. So yeah, those are kind of my answers to the questions, and it was great to work through them and great to think through them as well.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much, and thank you for your leadership in the community and making your environment inclusive for all. That is one of the definite great first steps in order to make our community on a larger scale more inclusive. The examples that you shared were quite powerful in the sense that it's not the first time I've heard comments around the police being called for noise disturbance, and the individual that the call was made on was someone from the Black community. So it's very
The
interesting.
complaint was from somebody revving their pickup truck down the road.
Yeah, so it's good that we're having these conversations and sharing these stories, because it also, it creates a different impact, being from someone from the, who identifies as non-Black, who's white, having experienced that and now sharing it and understanding the impacts to the individuals who were directly impacted is quite powerful, and paints a very different picture from someone who would look like me, stating that it shouldn't be that way, but the reality of our society is it is what it is. So I do thank you for coming out there and getting uncomfortable and sharing these examples. Does anyone else on the task force have any questions or comments for Jay? Yes, Mr. Tapper.
Jay, sorry, can I just go through your list? Inclusion guidelines, representation in schools, Black history curriculum, staff representation. There was a bunch of other good stuff you had there. Do you mind?
Yeah, sure, Gear, for sure. So Black history, hosting organizations that have a proven track record in racism education and offering those services to the community in terms of education, ensuring that community events and festivals are representative of all our citizens in terms of content.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jay, we're Shelburne have a number of churches, and a lot of those churches have buildings that they're here all the time. Yeah. Is there a group of, I won't just call them ministers because we have other kinds of churches, but are there representatives from the groups of churches that get together to discuss common issues?
There is, Ken, there's a ministerial here in town. Okay. It goes through seasons of health, and then it gets smaller and then builds and gets smaller. I would say it doesn't walk in the potential that could be there. They meet, but quite often kind of what happens in the meetings maybe are more insular into the congregations rather than kind of from a town spiritual perspective. So it's there, kind of the framework is there.
I was thinking in terms of what we might recommend to the town council, I think we're going to be making recommendations that are more than just things the council itself can do. And for instance, if this group wanted to go back and talk to all the churches, is there first of all a collected group of, ministerial group that we could talk to first?
There is, and there could be an open door there that I could, welcome this group into for sure.
Would you think they'd be interested?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. The second one was in terms of, I think the safe space idea has come up several times now this evening, and your church is rather unique because your space isn't in Orangeville. Is in Orangeville.
Our actual building, yeah, we meet in the cafeteria at the high school here in Shelburne.
I understand that, but 6.5 days a week, that's not open to you.
Right, yeah.
But it would seem to me there's lots of space in this town to achieve that safe physical space, as one thing, by using our churches. That seem reasonable to you and some of the things that you maybe heard this evening?
Yeah, I think it would. I know in church culture, there is some churches that would open their doors. As Eric said, the United Church has maybe opened its doors to as a safe space. Other churches maybe wouldn't be as maybe open to do that, but I mean, great buildings, great spaces for sure to provide safe spaces. Absolutely. Okay. I wish we had a permanent location to provide a safe space. Absolutely. So we're still always working on that for sure.
Well, not to demean what you do, you're doing a great job, and it's a great church that's got its, impact on the whole Dufferin community. So you're doing a good job with that. But I'm hearing this thing about space, and I think there's lots of space in a community, lots of physical space in a community. How we staff that or what we do with it, it surely shouldn't be a problem to find space.
Yeah, one of the ideas that we've talked about and are pursuing is potentially having a kind of a Monday through Saturday, maybe storefront, a space for games nights, spoken word nights, music nights, arts nights, and then having our Sunday gathering at the high school because it's large enough to accommodate 250 people. But yeah, having kind of maybe a storefront kind of idea as a space for sure is something that we'd be totally open to.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Jay, sorry, not trying to put him on spot, but I just wanted to see if himself or somebody who he knows who might be interested in participating in our focus group discussion, somebody from that kind of religious background and who has had lived or witnessed experiences in the town of Shelburne.
Yeah, I think I saw did an email come through during our meeting? I thought I saw maybe with the survey come through. Yeah, I can absolutely think of some folks to maybe include for sure in the survey.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Perfect. Just one general comment for any of the presenters. So, for example, with Celebrate Your Awesome and, with recognizing the Pride flag in Dufferin County or in some areas of Dufferin County, how were you able to, what were some of the obstacles that you had to overcome in order to get to those accomplishments? So, Celebrate Your Awesome is, fairly established and quite popular now. What were some of the challenges that you had to overcome in order to get to where you are today? And ultimately where I'm going with this is, what lessons can we take from, your learnings to implement going forward?
Well, I guess I was on the Celebrate the Awesome committee, so I think that we just made sure that it was a community event, and it was very difficult for people to understand. Everyone wanted to make it a Pride event exclusively, and it wasn't about that. It was just about celebrating all the weirdnesses and wonderfulnesses that each and every one of us have, and for everybody to have the opportunity to wear some red lipstick and glitter if they really wanted to. So the obstacle was to keep it light instead of political. There was never really a problem with money. We were really surprised when we went out into community, the support we got financially through politicians and through individuals and specifically businesses. And I think the greatest reward of all of that is just that it brought back people in the community who had left because they had felt isolated and alone, and they left the community and they came back and saw what had happened to their town and they were really pleased. The obstacles, we didn't really have a lot, to be really honest with you, because we just were upfront that we wanted about not being a gay festival, but being an awesome festival, to keep the politics the hell out of it. Because I worked with enough damn politicians,
I have a question for you on that, Wayne. I understand, like when you're saying that you wanted to keep it a community event, but I don't know, for how long do we need to feel that way, that, oh, I want to keep it out of politics? Like somebody, like celebrating Pride event as is, saying it's a Pride event. How many more years or centuries or decades are we going to take to be able to freely say that without repercussions or without worrying that, oh my goodness, this is going to turn into a political debate now. This is going to hurt somebody's feelings.
Well, you got to learn to keep it light, I guess, Simran. I don't know. Just everyone is entitled to their opinions, and I really believe that. It's if you want to be accepted, you have to accept other people, even if the other people's an asshole. Unless you're willing to accept other people, you can't be accepted yourself. So you kind of got to give them a bit of space and not let politics get into it, because when politics is about power, and when people in power discriminate, it's so much more hurtful than when you're just slighted on the street, to be really honest with you.
Because I remember from last year's Celebrate Your Awesome event, when we had that human library I was not even one of the participants. What I was doing was I was inviting people in to have an exposure to the experiences that these human books had gone through. And some of these people, I think they were present at the events because it was a community event. They felt it was okay to attend those events. If it was tagged as a Pride event, they wouldn't have attended those. So because they were there, I reached out to them and I said, this is what we are doing. This is an amazing thing. This is a new concept. Would you want to go and, see what their experiences are? We have some amazing human books. And these people said, is it related to Pride? Are these people gay? And they had the audacity to ask me those questions. And I responded however way I felt appropriate. And they declined it just based on the knowledge that these human books are gay. And I still remember those responses and how they reacted as if I had said something so nasty, so disgusting that, oh my goodness, you shouldn't have said, like, wash your mouth. What did you just say? And I think that was the time that I realized that, why are we calling this a community event? Why are these people even here? If they don't want to support people from all walks of life, why are they here when they are not ready to celebrate the awesomeness? So I think there comes a time when you think, you know what, to heck with the political agenda or whatever their beliefs are not. I understand we have to be open-minded, but then why is the responsibility on the people who are already feeling suffocated?
Yeah, you're right. I think the labor really does need to fall upon just general community members who maybe aren't part of diverse communities. The labor should be on them to educate. So maybe Wayne, I don't know because I wasn't part of those discussions, but at the beginning, I've always wondered if maybe having it more open as opposed to just a Pride event is that people who came in for other reasons maybe could have a bit of exposure and there wasn't such fear. I think they don't know what to expect when they go to a Pride event. Is those drag queens and there's, is there going to be nudity or whatever they might think. But then you go to an event that's maybe a bit lighter and you have maybe less anxiety about being exposed to some of these cultures. So
my experience is always to be inclusive is more important than to be exclusive. If it's just a Pride event, great, every gay person shows up, but it's not about that. It's about being part of the community, being accepted in the community and being safe in the community, I guess. But Simran, those people that had trouble with those human books, wait till they find out that some of those men in dresses aren't gay. They're just men who like to wear, straight men who like to wear dresses. I think that was the big surprise. It's a lot of that shit in Shelburne too, but anyway, that's another story.
I wanted to say, like, kind of to what Eric was saying, I mean, you shouldn't have to sort of not, like, you should be able to say you're gay or be able to say that this is like a Pride event and, it's simply just Pride and we're celebrating us, we're recognizing us, we're embracing us. I don't think you have to say, oh, it's a community event and kind of hide behind it. I think you should proudly be able to say that, and not have to sort of cut down on your identity for other people to feel included.
I think in our suggestions, we should include that, like how we have Alcoholics Anonymous, the same way we should have Homophobic Anonymous. We should have a group Racist Anonymous, where these people can openly go, accept that they have this issue and they can sort of work their way out of this. And it shouldn't be a responsibility on the marginalized and racialized people.
I'm bringing that one up at school.
So isn't that ultimately part of what we're trying to accomplish, right? We're trying to find solutions to make our community more inclusive. So we're solutioning right now, and these conversations are creating some definitely great ideas. Stemming from this conversation, I want to throw it back to Jay and ask, when you opened up the church in Shelburne, I'm imagining that you would have probably started with, a congregation of maybe 10. You alluded to the fact that you have somewhere around 250 and it's very diverse now. How did you go about, or how did your congregation become so inclusive? What were some of the key steps that you took, or did it just organically happen where you're now a very diverse community?
It was, yeah, it was organic. I would say when the first first few Black families arrived and they were loved and welcomed immediately. They knew they just found a home and a family. And then I think when other members of the Black community came, there was a trust level that, oh, they're here. There's other Black people here, so it must be a safe place. And it just kind of grew and word spread. And one person told one person, and so on and so on as it goes, as the shampoo commercial used to go. So I think it was more of an organic thing than an intentional thing. We just tried to be welcoming and loving and represent God the best we could. I wish there was a strategy, but it was just, I think, good people hopefully being good people.
Perfect. Thank you.
To that point, Alicia, sorry, if I could, I mean, one of the things that's sort of been on my mind for a while, and then Wayne picked up on it tonight, you know, having watched our community change the way it has over the last, 10 years and grow the way it has and diversify the way it has, I think Wayne was spot on when he said, it's simply part of human nature to, have suspicions, but over time, those suspicions can be eased through shared experiences. And I think that's sort of that organic process that we're talking about here. And to be honest, I think there is a lot of value to that. And, over time, I do honestly think our community will become more inclusive, more accepting, all of that good stuff that we're aiming towards. But I think the struggle is, and what I struggle with is being impatient to allow that organic process to unfold. So, what sorts of processes can we put in place to kind of, speed that organic process along? And I mean, I don't know if Wayne or Eric or Jay, has any insight with respect to that, but I mean, that really sort of is the big question mark in my mind. And that's what I struggle with as a leader in the community, that, if left alone, I think over a long period of time, as people just simply get to know each other as human beings, a lot of this will take care of itself. But, that's not going to happen fast enough for me or any of us, to be honest. So what can we do proactively to try to move the needle on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely.
So Wayne actually said it, and it was echoed by a great education from the United States, Bettina Love. And she talked about the idea of, so she's speaking to marginalized, racialized groups. She talked about aligning your concerns with the dominant group. Right, and so essentially what Wayne said, common goals, right? Because when the dominant group becomes concerned with something that you're doing because it benefits them, then they will be on board, and then they will want to thing. And so I can understand the political nature of not doing as the event as a pride event, but to make it a celebration event. Those are common goals, right? It's a party. Those are common goals, and that allows people to buy in because they see what is in it for them.
Good point. Nathan, not to put you on the spot, but I know you've done some great work in the schools. What are some of the things that have worked well with the students that you're working with, making the environment more inclusive for them?
So most of the stuff on more queer inclusion at the school. And I really got into that because when I was first hired, we have a French office in the janitor's hallway of all places at Centennial Highlands. And but it's also it's the office for all the planning time staff because we don't have our own room, our own classroom. And I was very upfront about my queer body and queer identities. And one of the staff members that was in that office went to the admin and said that they refused to share an office with me and that they were going to have their child homeschooled because they didn't want me to teach their child. So that was the work that I did, and that was what really prompted me to get in to be the equity lead of the school, because I thought this is the kids are getting. That has to, it wouldn't just be with the queer community. Like those messages would have to translate across different boundaries. Like these kids would be getting racist messages, these kids would be getting sexist messages. And I thought this was really a problem that needs to be solved at this school, especially as the diversity of the students changed when we got the French immersion program. The whole face of the school really changed and shifted. I thought it was work we needed to do. So most of the work that the school had me do and training on was on that queer inclusion, because there were a lot of kids who would say that's so gay, who would call each other faggots and make burning jokes. Just things like that, right? Any girl that had short hair wasn't just a tomboy; she was a dyke, and they'd make inappropriate sexual comments about what kids would do with various body parts, and it was entirely inappropriate, or inappropriate rather. So a lot of staff came to me because I became the token queer. So anytime anything came up in class, they were just completely uncomfortable dealing with it themselves. The health curriculum, any of the bullying, they couldn't do it. They felt that they just could not approach that. So I really had to unpack a couple of our staff meetings, just me unpacking the health curriculum for them and walking through things that the government had started to put into place, because the government has been trying bit by bit, very slowly, albeit too slowly, but bit by bit, to implement some of these things through the health curriculum, through some of Black History Month stuff that we've been doing, which was stuff I tried to branch out more into this year, to try and move a little bit outside of just the queer focus of the school, but also do more around Black History Month and expanding that beyond February, so it's not just the month where we recognize Black people and then never again. So really, it's mostly just been the staff coming to me, but it's also something that I noticed in terms of the deference that I think Leanne mentioned in the video that I watched. There was one year where we did have a Black staff member, and even that year, staff still came to me about racial issues instead of them. Even when we had a staff member, I'm not saying that, that once you get a Black staff member, they need to now be the token Black person, right? But as a white person, I became very aware that people were still coming to me about these issues in their classrooms instead of actually approaching someone in the community who has actual direct lived experience with these things. So I've been trying to shift that away, and unfortunately now our school does not have any Black staff, that should be ringing alarm bells if it hasn't already. I think it's important to find out why we don't have Black teachers coming to our schools, because I've been to Guelph. Guelph schools have Black staff. Why is it we don't? Why are they not coming here? So I've been trying to educate myself as best as possible. One of the people I transitioned with in high school, she's a member of the Black community, and there were a few years where I was very uncomfortable about this with myself, or my staff rather, my colleagues. I, as a white person, wasn't comfortable talking to students about these issues as though I was the expert, because I'm not Black. I didn't want to speak over Black people. I didn't want to speak for Black people. White people have spoken so much for other cultures instead of letting them speak for themselves. But she told me this past year, as I started to branch out into Black History Month, and I went to her and I said, I'm very uncomfortable doing this. It needs to be done, but I don't know if I'm the one that should be doing this. And she said, well, there is no one else at your school who's going to do it. So until someone who is better qualified, it's better to make mistakes and bumble along the way and do something rather than nothing. So really what I've just been trying to do in the school is educate myself as much as possible and uncover my own biases. Because I grew up in a very racist culture. I know I've got racist biases. I know I've got racist biases that I'm not even aware of yet, but I will become aware of. So that's mostly just been my focus, encouraging the staff to please look at that as well, because they all will say, oh, I don't see color. I'm not racist. I treat all my students equally. And I keep trying to push them. I say, oh, no, that's not actually true. We want to believe that's true, but it's not. So it's just really pushing them to educate themselves and educate myself until we get more of an expert in building. So which is partially why I wanted to be part of this committee, so I can really spread this work to where it's needed most, which is with kids.
Nathan, I could make a really strong suggestion to a video. Whole explanation on racism and white privilege is incredible.
Is her name Jane Elliott by any chance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is the quintessential.
She was actually very helpful because this past year I taught geography to a 6-7 FI split. And I actually reordered maps for the entire school because I noticed that all of our maps had North America and Europe as ginormous continents, and Africa and South America were tiny. And so I saw her video on like literally the size of the continent and why the maps are the way they are. And it was a really good moment to teach the kids and say, look, we assume that these are all like scientific, right? They're mathematically drawn and according to like standard units of measurement, but they're not. Even the standard maps we use come from systemic ideas of racism. Like, so that was a big part of like rolling these maps out throughout the entire school, taking down the old maps and talking to the kids. Why are we taking down this map that we've had in this room for 20 years? Why are we putting up these new ones? Why is it now harder to see Canada? Yep. So no, I love Jane Elliott's videos. She was very helpful for me this year in teaching geography.
Oh, she's incredible. Absolutely. And her blue eye, brown eye whole thing was incredible. Have you tried that?
Yeah.
The blue eye, brown eyed experiment?
Yeah.
Is that part of your unconscious bias test that that exists out there publicly?
Yeah.
Is that the objective? Okay.
Yeah, it basically, what Jane talks about is everything we teach our kids right now. And just like he was saying, starts with maps. The maps we've used forever are wrong. Canada is not one of the largest continents in the whole world.
The equator does not go through Texas.
Europe. But so she talks about bringing everything back to reality, on what the reality of this whole thing is, and to understand that systemic racism goes so much further than we ever know. Children are taught inadvertently about racism from the time they're in kindergarten, and it's really, really crazy. And to try, if you guys ever try this, it gets everybody mad. Try the blue-eyed, brown-eyed experiment. It's absolutely incredible how quickly you really get a picture of where that racism lies and where all of this comes from, and it opens your eyes. I mean, she did these experiments with university kids. Okay. And it was pretty incredible.
Thank you for sharing that, Debbie. Nathan, thank you for sharing your journey and all the things that you were able to accomplish at the school, and the steps that you're putting in place to unlearn and learn new things when it comes to breaking down the barriers. Before we close for the night, I'd like to give everyone a chance to ask any final questions or add any commentary to any of the topics that we discussed tonight.
I'll just make a brief comment with respect to Nathan's presentation, or comments rather. First of all, I mean, to me, what I gathered from your comments is the importance of representation within the schools, and that we have to be intentional about it. And I certainly could speak to, and maybe I'll go as far as to say sympathize with you when you made reference to being the token and the weight that one has to carry in being that token. Is a discussion for another day. And so we have to do better to ensure that is no longer the case. And you then took it to another level when you talked about when now you have a racialized individual and yet the deferral is still to the person that is white. And I thought that was powerful itself. And I could certainly see from a recommendation standpoint, you know, making certain suggestions back to the school and the school board as to how individuals could be traumatized in that situation. Whether it's an individual like yourself and feeling the sense of, geez, I don't know if I should be speaking to these issues because I am not Indigenous or I'm not Black, for example, and the stress and the pressure that it puts on a person like yourself. So those were important points that you raised, and I thank you for that. I just want to circle back to Wade's comments with respect to not necessarily waiting for things to arise organically, and I certainly agree. And I thought Jay's presentation was really excellent in really talking about what we could do intentionally. So for example, he talked about community festivals that are more representative of our diverse community, inclusion guidelines for community and events, and lobbying for representation, whether it be the police force and government. These are very intentional things that are within our control that we could certainly utilize to move that needle forward. So we're not simply just waiting for things, as you said, wait to happen organically. And then lastly, I'll say that in reference to Ken's point about space, and Debbie, you spoke about space when it came to the Indigenous. It's something that we're constantly hearing. But I thought Eric made an important point, and Eric, if I misspoken, it wasn't you, but about even though these spaces are being created by the churches, you have individuals that may not necessarily feel safe in those spaces for a variety of reasons. And so I think, Ken, as you said, we have a lot of spaces, and I think it's very important that not only we utilize the church spaces, but the public spaces. And so when I think about, for example, the CDRC and the country and town room, for example, or I think about the library where they have that room in the basement, for example, these are all areas that are public in nature, doesn't have, for example, let's say a religious connotation to it. And so for those who feel that they want to maybe even escape that for whatever reason, that they have those public spaces that are available to them as well. So I think as part of the recommendations, when we get to that stage, it's certainly how we could utilize better our public spaces and not have fees. I think I heard from Wayne or somebody else that may end up being barriers, or maybe that was from Eric, about having fees as barriers that would prevent young people from gathering in these spaces. And so that's something that we could look at. But overall, I thought the presentations and the comments were fantastic.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Anderson.
And thank you to both Eric and, or sorry, not both, there's three, Wayne and Jay and Eric for your presentations this evening.
And everybody, just remember to say hello to everybody you pass on the streets in Shelburne, because that's one thing that has changed in Shelburne. I used to say hello to everybody, and everybody said hello to me, and everybody on this group is responsible, whether you're white, Black, or whatever, to say hello to someone on the street, because that's the first step, and it's so friggin' easy. So
true.
Goodbye, everybody. I'm going to dinner.
Yes, enjoy.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Stay safe.
So we can officially close our meeting at 7.
Alethea, I wanted to make a comment first, if you don't
Sure,
mind.
absolutely, yeah.
Earlier in the meeting, you mentioned about getting a phone call, or sorry, some questions regarding school board.
Yes.
That came to you. For heaven's sakes, divert those people. Send those people about issues. And she's open to that. I mean, she's open to individual children. She's open to parents. Call her, because she's the route to speaking to the school board to talk about some of the things we're talking about now, whether it's an individual who is experiencing difficulty or it's a change you'd like to see made in the school system.
Absolutely. So
the other one I was going to comment.
Go ahead.
I was also going to comment with regard to myself. I'm on the hospital board. We're a big hospital. We're one of the biggest employers in the area. I get almost no questions about healthcare. And so if people are harboring issues about healthcare, they should call me, because I can hear them and then send them to the person that may be able to solve their problems. We've got a lot of contacts in this green that I think we should not always wait till the final big decision of what we do at the end. But if I know that I can route somebody to Wade or Steve or Gear or somebody, do it. Let's not sit on these things too long, especially with regard to the inequities that we're talking about this evening.
Great points, Ken. And one of the things that, I struggle with, individuals don't feel safe. And this is not the first time that these comments have come up where, there's an issue in the school and there's an issue with someone's child and, they've been referred to their trustee and for whatever reason, they don't want to go that route. I've heard examples of, individuals just moving their children out of the school board specifically because they're not comfortable. So I don't know how we can create another environment. Short of me, walking someone to Lynn's door, I'm not sure how else I can encourage them to speak up and let their voices be heard. And that's
well,
why
we live at 152 Muriel Street, and like Wayne says, I love to hide people. Lynn and I don't hide. We're both on Facebook. We both have our telephone numbers in the phone book. And I'll just tell you, just a brief anecdote, but in the 14 years that Lynn has been trustee, she has received one phone call about racial issues in the school. One phone call in 14 years. So, I mean, if people have these issues, don't sit on them. It gets a lot of calls about my kid was beaten up after school or the teacher was grumpy with my child, those kind of things. But
Althea is absolutely right, though. The parents aren't feeling safe enough to come forward. And there needs to be another way to make that connection easier. To be able to do that. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Deb, adding to your point and Alethea's point. There is a general, so folks from the straight, gay community and so on, LGBT, racialized folks, there's a distrust of whether it be heterosexual spaces, there's a distrust of white spaces, there's a distrust of certain spaces. Eric talked about the distrust of the church space, right? And so if an individual wants to be understood as someone that like a Black voice can come to, they have to present themselves or put themselves in spaces that suggest that they're comfortable or want to be in places where Black voices are, right? So, hey, I can go to her because, or him because, I seen Jay, coaching my kid at soccer, right? I seen Jay, I can trust him because I've spoken to him outside of, going to official capacity, because there's a concern about institutions and how they perpetuate themselves, right? And there's no way for us to know that the concerns will not be heard unless we have a contact with that person, right? Could we just default to what institutions are, right?
So I have another thing too. When individuals come to you, did you actually make it safe for them to say what they needed to say? Did you actually hear them out? One of the things that I know Alethea has gone through this too, when people come to us and they do talk to us, one of the things that they do bring up is, well, I tried to say it, but I didn't feel safe and I didn't feel that they were actually listening to what I was saying. And I didn't feel that when I was saying it, they had so many questions and made me feel like I was the one in the wrong. When I'm trying to tell you, this is what was done to me. So you have to be conscious of those things too.
I agree with you. Absolutely.
I agree with you, Althea. I totally agree with that.
And this is not a slight against any individual.
No, absolutely not.
It's just so systemic. The racism exists, and that lack of trust because of that. That's massive, and it's really hard for people to overcome.
And just following on your point there, it's just the whole meeting started with what Gear had said about what some of the councillors had said in the town hall meeting, and my whole meeting has been with that in the back of my mind. Are our leaders actually discussing or debating the existence of this task force, or that it should have been delayed? Like, I mean, this is, it's really troubling me in the back of my mind because I trust our leaders, right? Like, I'm not a politician. I trust the politicians, right? And so I'm going to go back and look at that video, and I want to feel comfortable, right? I mean, I haven't faced any racism from our politicians directly, but I'm really worried about what I'm going to see in that video now. So I'm going to go forward with hope, and I hope people feel safe in this town, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the goal. It has to be the goal.
Ken, going back to your comment, I talked about, the environment has to be safe for people to speak up. And if we look at other areas, other communities, where there's a large marginalized community, oftentimes, individuals, when they speak up, then they're targeted. You see,
Yes.
Black children who are usually the ones left behind for various reasons. And because they're vocal, because they're speaking up. So even if we take lessons from other communities and try to reverse engineer, how can we make the environment safe where parents don't feel like, if they speak out, that their child is going to be the one left in the corner. I don't know what Lynn, I can vouch for Lynn. She's a sweet lady. I've met her, we've had conversation, but not everyone has had that opportunity with her. Not everyone has that same relationship with her. So I don't know what you can do on your end to change that dynamic. I'll leave that with you to try and figure out. The other comment that has come up quite a few times, is around teachers, the lack of diversity, the lack of representation in our schools. The student population has changed significantly over the last few years. But the administrative staff has not changed to reflect that. Yes, there are lots of temporary staff that identify as, racialized in one way, shape, or form, but there's a lack of permanent staff in our schools. So what can we do about that? Parents have not seen that change. So that is one of the things that we definitely need to have addressed.
Absolutely.
So that's a good topic when the school board people come to talk about. But there's so much involved with what you've just said.
I see you're struggling, Ken. It's
teachers by race. No, well, I'm struggling with a lot of stuff because what I'm hearing here is we have some people in the community that are willing to listen, and you're saying that people are afraid to talk to us. I don't know why. I mean, it's not because Lynn has had 10 calls about racial issues and she's annoyed people. She doesn't get the calls. So, I mean, on racial issues, people are not coming forward and making their concerns known. I don't know if they're coming forward to Steve and to Wade about them at a town level. I don't know.
Can I share an example with you on this? So my own experience, the year before, in 2018, a 33-year-old woman who has lived through a lot in life, I could not explain the racial discrimination appropriately to a white woman who gave me a platform. This woman reached out to me. She offered me a good amount of audience, a lot of women from all walks of life who were ready to listen to whatever I had to say. And she indirectly made it very specific that when she says that I have to talk about my issues in town, I should not mention certain points. And she didn't get where I was coming from. And she kept reminding me that this stage is for equal opportunity. And I could not explain the concept or the difference between equity and equality to her at that time. I am 33 years old.
So
and I've done a lot, I've learned a lot. And that's what I'm saying. She was, in her mind, she was being welcoming to any feedback, any suggestions, anything that I wanted to discuss with her, but I could not.
Yeah.
Trust me, I clarified this issue with her 2 years after. It took me 2 years, I'm still so shocked that it took me 2 years. So imagine the parents who might not be as exposed to talking openly about these issues, all these kids who might not know how to talk to their own parents about what happened to them, who don't know the differentiation between because they are new in this town, that's why it is happening to them, or because they look a certain way, that's why it's happening to them. So there's a lot at play here.
Absolutely.
I wanted to say, the parents and the students might be feeling that way because when these students do report to the principal, teacher, guidance counselor, etc., there isn't anything being done about it. And of course, when they come home to their parents or whatever, they're like, oh, like what happened? And they tell them, well, there was nothing done about it. And for the parents, they're thinking, like, they're not really too sure. So they think that, oh, whatever the principals and the guidance counselors and stuff are doing, they think that the school board trustees and the people who work there are aware of that. When in reality, the school board trustees, they are very passionate about making sure these things don't happen. And they have very strict rules and very specific rules at that established, that they expect the principals, the guidance counselors, the teachers, all those kinds of people to enforce, right? And so when the parents and the students see this reaction, this negative reaction that nobody's helping them, everything's being swept under the rug, pushed to the side, then they think that the school board trustees are the same. They think that, there's just no point, it's not safe, we're scared to share our opinions because nothing's being done about it, and it's just like, okay, whatever. Like, I've been told to just smile and walk away when someone's in your face. Like, it's just not gonna happen. I'm not gonna smile and walk away.
No, you shouldn't have to.
Yes.
Can I share a story?
I'm actually, sorry, Gary, sorry, one second. I'm actually glad that Ken is bringing these things up, because for the fact that Ken is saying this stuff also reflects the fact that there are others in the community that also think the same way. Why isn't someone bringing up racism if racism actually exists? And Ken, maybe you actually don't know because you're not Black, you're not brown, that, it looks like the perpetrator, he's white, a white person, just, maybe you have grease in your hair. And, so they feel comfortable going to the imam in the community or another Black person in the community saying, guess what I just went through, right? So maybe this committee could actually take what he's saying, notice that probably there's a good number of people in Shelburne that think like that, and use that as part of our recommendation, right?
Yep. We will be getting a lot of this through our surveys and focus group as well. That's why we wanted to include all demographics in it, right?
I really want to hear what Greer has to say, if anyone else doesn't mind.
Yeah, totally. Sorry, Gear.
No, please. I've spoken as well. A couple of years ago, there was an election in town, and what people have to understand is the body you exist in has a history and a story. And if I see you from far off down the way, right, and I see you walking towards me, automatic things come into my mind about who you are, how safe you are, or so on and so forth, right? And depending on who this body is, looking out and seeing that person coming towards me, I make a decision about safety or not, right? Election time a couple of years ago, 2 different politicians came to our door, knocked on our door, and I had a conversation with 2 of them. And one of them I decided I was going to trust. And the difference was that he invited me to take part in the process. He invited me to be a part of the town. Whereas the other gentleman was kind of like, give me your vote, I'll take care of the rest. You know what I mean? And I think I told you the story, Ken, the first time I met you. And these automatic biases we have about the others in our society, they are there. They just exist, right? And white folks, straight folks, so on, have to do things to make the others feel safe. You know what I mean? And for me, that moment of deciding to trust that individual was an invitation to take part, as opposed to give me your vote and I'll take care of everything.
Yeah, because you can't be sure they're going to follow through. I get that.
But here's a secondary thing, and I thought this is very bold, but I'm going to say it any which way. When you're coming into a town and you're different, and then the people who you trust are the same people who are telling you, well, you're an outsider, how likely are you to trust them? How likely are you to go and tell them and report things to them? Because they already view you as an outsider. How safe are you actually making it?
Exactly. I agree with that totally.
But we do need allies. We do need white people as our allies. We do need the LGBT community. We do need, brown people, Black people, So I am trying to learn patience through this committee here, where we can move forward. Like, I'm a regular resident. I just want to make sure there's no racism. And I've been fortunate to be around Shelburnites who are very, very open and friendly. They come to my house. Everything's great. But racism does exist, right? White fragility does exist.
I think
And
that's why we're in the task force.
Absolutely.
And it always will, right? No matter how hard we try, no matter what we do, it always will. But I mean, we have task forces and we have Black Chapter and we have things like that that can help to spread more awareness and education and perhaps calms things down or convince other people. I mean, it's sad that we have to convince other people, but it has to be done. I mean, if that's what's going to make things better, then that's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
Given all the passion I've just heard, though, yes, we have to take steps to do that. And I mean, I use the example again. If people have to, in this case, Black people have to be bold enough to go to the white people that are apparently in charge to say, I've got a problem. And if we don't listen to you, then bad on us, okay? But if you don't come to us, bad on you. I mean, it's tough. We all have had to do tough things in our lives. But I think one of the things that's going to come out of this, as we move towards the end, we have to encourage everybody in the community to find tactics to get the things done that they think need to be done. And whether it's the school board or the town council or whether it's the hospital, we've got to teach people tactics to do those things and encourage them to do it. Because right now, they're just not doing it. And it's festering out there that things aren't being done and people don't care. And that's just not true in a lot of cases because nothing's being done. People aren't asking questions. People aren't saying, help me.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
And can I say something to what you just said?
Hold on a second. I think we just heard for the last 10 minutes, and I don't want to turn this into us versus that person and sort of speaking over each other. I think the points have been made, but I think we must be careful in the words and the language that we use. When you say that people are not speaking up and they have a responsibility, I think what we just heard for the last 10 minutes, if not longer, is the fact that people are speaking, but they feel that their voices, for whatever reason, are not being heard, or they're told to tinker with what they have to say. So they're provided with the falsity of openness and inclusiveness, but then they're told to limit or to curb what they have to say. And so I think that there are a lot of people who are speaking up, but they're feeling that nothing has been done. You just heard Soha mention the fact that there are people who are speaking to whether there be teachers or principals or otherwise, and nothing seemingly is being done. And as a result of that, they are now discouraged from moving forward. So I don't disagree, Ken, that there may be some people who internalize things and don't vocalize. It's the same sort of viewpoint that I have about people who complain about politics but don't bother to vote. Mm-hmm. So I totally agree with you in that sentiment. If you're not saying something, or if you feel you've been wronged, you're not saying something, there is a responsibility on you to speak up. But I think what we're hearing on the flip side is that there are a number of people are speaking up, but for whatever reason don't feel safe or don't feel comfortable, or feel when they are speaking, they're being told to, okay, I hear you, but could you sort of calm it down and maybe just talk about X and Y instead of Z? So I just want to add to that, but as you said, Ken, and I agree that, look, we're here to make things better. And I think hearing all these different perspectives is going to allow us to be better, and we will be better. And this is what I certainly believe are going to form part of the recommendations as we go forward. So I just want to make sure that we are cautious in what we're saying, because we don't want anybody watching this later on and feeling that we're somehow making an indictment on those who are there and willing to listen, and those who have spoken but also feel that they're not listening. So we just have to be mindful of that. So that's all I wanted to say on that.
No, you're right. You're right, Steve.
I'm hoping that maybe some of that labor can be put on some of the allies, such as myself and others, to be able to make that safer space. Or when you have individuals who want to speak up, an ally can maybe help with that process if you're going to a person who is white and heterosexual in a position of power, who maybe there's some biases and they just don't want to hear it. I think I used this example a lot when I was sat on committees with Family Transition Place. I was on Mentors, so it was a group of men supporting like anti-abuse against women. That sometimes it becomes this almost broken record, unfortunately, when you have a group of women talking about issues of domestic violence. Well, you need the allies to also break the that kind of broken records cycle. It's unfortunate, it should be how it is, but I think that's maybe why some of the labor should fall on allies to
I
be able
agree.
to take that off.
That's a good point, Eric, because oftentimes, you know, as marginalized individuals, there's a feeling of being tired. You know, you've tried so many times and it's falling on deaf ears. On the flip side, Ken, you know, again, you know, you've made the point of saying that, you know, individuals like yourselves have, you know, been open and very inviting, but maybe it's more than, maybe we need to do something more than the words. Maybe we need to act, and what that acting looks like, you know, to be determined. You know, maybe it's as simple as, you know, immersing yourself into another culture, much like how, you know, individuals from the Black community would reach out and try to go to Jay's church as an example. Maybe it's the reverse. So invite yourself, or, you know, be in different spaces that you're uncomfortable with, so that people start to be familiar with you and all the great work that you're doing on the hospital board, and all the great work that, you know, the trustee is doing at the school board. So it's a lot of work on both ends. There's a lot of learning and unlearning that we all have to do. It's not on you to solve for, you know, the problems of systemic racism. It's not for me to solve for. It's for all of us together to work together to, you know, to get over this hurdle and make our community more inclusive. So saying and acting, you know, acting definitely, you know, is what we need to do, more than just saying that, you know, we're inclusive and, you know, we want to make our community safe. We have to start acting. Okay, does anyone else have any comments? I want to leave on a positive note for the night.
I'm good.
Nothing related to this, but I have an ask of Mayor Wade and Deputy Mayor Steve about my baby focus group. If you guys can share the information about this focus group and maybe send an invite to town staff, specifically from departments like bylaw enforcement and the economic and community development department. And if you have like a parks and rec department, if those are the people I think who interact a lot with people from business community, with newer residents, with you know, people who might perceive that they just got ticketed because they were new or because they were different. So we want to hear their perspective as well through that focus group. I understand that you cannot guarantee or you cannot force anybody to take that survey. It will be their own time. But just if you guys can share this information with them, and I will hope that they would want to participate. Or any business owners specifically that you might know would be interested in participating.
Perfect, thanks, Simran. Okay, so I would like to end on a positive note. So I'm going to end with thank you again, Task Force, for, you know, some amazing dialogue. And, you know, I can see the passion, and I think this passion is what is going to get us, you know, over the hurdle and get us to producing something magnificent that we can all act on as a community and make our community more inclusive. So again, thank you everyone for your dedication, your passion, and all the hard work that you've put in to get us to this far. Again, if you haven't completed the survey, please make sure that you do so and share it with your network. Every voice counts, and that's the only way that we can make sure that we're moving the dial forward. Thank you, and it's 8:20, and have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.